Hello, everyone. My name is Cassandra Thomas. I'm here today to share with you pro tips on the highly nuanced and technical consulting services category. I'm a member of the Denali WNS Shared Services Organization. You may be wondering, what is the highly technical consulting category and what does that mean? This, I'm sure you've had exposure to when you're dealing with a business group that needs to bring on a subject matter expert to either advise or do a particular type of scope for them. And we often find ourselves in a bit of a conundrum here because this is a very relationship-driven category. Because of its high nuance, it's hard to negotiate and hard to reap savings or value. However, there are a couple of pro tips that I'll bring you today to show how to get beyond that hump. The first is that it's absolutely possible to normalize rates and titles within this space. For example, you might be going for a very technical scope where your business needs your subject matter expertise to come in and do something for them. Even if you have high-level titles with levels 1 through 5, for example, that show at level 1 a very low skill set, very entry-level individual coming in to do the work versus a level 5, which would be more of a CEO type of tenure and skill set, you're start to able to fit those individuals and proposals from suppliers within that structure. And it can help you then to move forward within your category structure to go with my pro tip number 2, which is to set up a supplier tier structure. I'll give you an example of how this has worked in the past, and maybe you and your team have been able to start to do this across other categories where it might be applicable as well. In this example, I'm segmenting out tier 1, 2, and 3, depending on a supplier's size, their range of capability, and their years of tenure and expertise within that category. A tier 1 would be your very high level, very large firms, versus a tier 3 being more of a boutique firm that has a lot of depth of experience, but maybe not as much breadth of experience. This allows you to set up a structure to begin analyzing rates and scope as you get proposals in from suppliers, or even as more upstream, you start your conversations with your business stakeholders to determine what exactly they need and the type of supplier they're going for. That leads me to my pro tip number 3, which is the recommendation that you then begin working with a subset of preferred suppliers rather than engaging with a long tail. It has many advantages, but the first is that when you know your supply base better and they know you, they're better able to provide a nuanced, skilled, highly deep subject matter expertise when they're delivering the service. And there's a higher chance that your business teams will be satisfied with it. It also helps to avoid co-employment. When you are really specifically working with a supplier that knows you and you have a good engagement structure with governance built behind it, there is less opportunity to be providing specific direction to individuals themselves. Rather, you're more tuned in to sticking with what's in your contract and with what you have engaged upstream to develop as expectations and driving forward there. That leads me to my pro tip number 4, which is the need to specify requirements. This is a difficult thing to do, especially when your business teams may not have a good idea about what the requirements are when the scope is so very highly nuanced. Nonetheless, it's important to engage in that discussion with them and make sure all of their expectations are out on the table. When you're especially working with a preferred supplier or even with non-preferred suppliers, you can then bring those ideas to them through either a competitive bid or one-on-one discussions in sole sourcing engagements to talk about what they're able to do. Through that iterative conversation, then a contract that specifically calls out and drills into what is the description of the work, as well as what are the key deliverables that the business needs and expects. That will help to fuel a really healthy relationship. And finally, you may think that, especially in a very highly skilled, highly unique type of scope, it's difficult to negotiate pricing, but that couldn't be farther from the truth. You can get creative and innovate pricing by moving away from your standard time and material models to more of a fixed pricing, pay for performance, or even dive into the opportunity. If you have access to an e-sourcing tool, think about basing your pricing off of time and material and negotiate down through an e-sourcing event. All of those things said, I'm very conscious of the fact that we are working today in a time of COVID, very unprecedented times, which really, especially in this space, require that we're diligent about identifying how we're expecting the supplier to perform, where and how where they're going to be performing the service, how they're delivering the final deliverables. Having that really well defined up front will allow you to engage more easily through unprecedented times when from one day to the next, we may not know when things are opening or when they're not. So that is, in summary, my 5 pro tips for the highly nuanced and technical consulting services space. Thank you for your time today. If you have questions, please feel free to comment below the video, reach out directly on LinkedIn. Thank you so much.